at its core, a disciple is a taught and trained one. So we understand there is a necessity for the teaching. But the other side about it is there is a necessity for training as well. The training is showing how to take what's being taught and apply it, right? If there's no training involved, there is no application to what's being taught. Therefore, there's no growth, and therefore there's no fruit being done by our discipleship efforts. We sometimes intermingle the terms teaching and training, and we make them to be synonymous when they're not. So we're going to have teaching this week. Oh, this night we're going to have training. We really just mean someone's going to get up there and talk. But by definition, teaching is the explanation and training is the application. If you're on your job right now, you might have a class you have to attend, but then you're going to have to take those tools and they're going to train you on how to use those. When they train you how to operate something at your job, whether it's a piece of equipment or whether it's a new computer or whatever it is, they don't just give you a class and say, okay, here it is. They're going to sit you down and they're going to walk you through it. Sometimes it's called on-the-job training, hands-on training. These are the tools by which we train. So churches are pretty decent at the idea behind teaching. We teach. Most churches do a pretty good job. I think we always can do better at getting word into people. So where do we fall short? We fall short in training because we have nowhere to go and apply the word. Notice what James says. Don't be simply hearers of the word, but be ye doers also. Well, the problem is, how do you know what to do if you've never done it? So what do? We teach people, and then we say, go get them, Sparky, and we drive them out there, and they figure it out on their own. And we wonder why there's no fruit. It's very much like, let's be honest, we all went to driving school. And we set up on the board and they said, here's how to make a left turn. Here's how to make a right turn. Here's what you do when you come to a 4-way stop. They had the little magnets on the board. Let's be honest, that taught you, but it did not train you to drive. When you got behind the wheel the first time, all the stuff you were taught was way back in the recesses of your mind. The way you learned how to drive was you got a learner's permit, you had somebody that had experience driving sit beside you, and in a real world environment, they said, watch out there. Okay, you want to check your blind spots. Make sure you know what the speed limit is. What are your gauges saying? Be careful when you're turning. You want to make sure that no cars here. Okay, watch here. That person's yielding. You have the right of way. Okay, they have the right. All these things, they're training you how to drive. So if we're going to have true disciples in our church, which Jesus said for us to go make disciples, we have to have teaching and training. Let's be honest. In most churches, the only place to fulfill ministry is a few positions held on Sunday morning. So you've got, the pastor, or maybe assistant, you got some musicians, a few Sunday school deals, and in a normal church, the higher you go up, the less positions they are. And so if you want to grow in the Lord, you've got to either wait for someone to backslide or retire. And if no one's backsliding, no one's retiring, you're stuck. And so what happens? People get frustrated and they go find another church. The Bible says a man's gift makes room for himself, but also we've got to take the lid so that room is there. We can say the man's gift makes room for himself, but if you put somebody in a box, there's no room for it to make room for itself. So when we say make disciples, we've got to have both the teaching, but we have to have the training. The training is the hands-on. When I remember when I was learning how to pray people through the Holy Ghost. We could be taught, here's some things, here's the biblical foundation of it, here's some things to look for. But the best experience I had was when I was 14 years old, I went to a crusade in Africa. And there was so many people there to be prayed for, they didn't care that you weren't qualified and had never prayed through 1,400 people. They just need somebody to pray. So I was there at 14 years old praying with people, and there was a couple of ministers with us on the trip that were sort of mentoring me, and I'd pray for them and they would say, okay, next time, here's what was happening. You might want to try this. Next time that person was really close, just encourage them. Watch out, that person was shutting down. You're better off moving on. They helped me, and within probably a weekend, of praying for people. When I came back, man, at 14 years old, I was well on my way to praying through people to the Holy Ghost. We understand that God is the baptizer. I'm not trying to take the credit for giving people the Holy Ghost, but understanding I was developing skills to help someone receive the Holy Ghost 14 years old because someone was training me. Someone was hands-on. And so in a church, we've got to have both aspects. Because if we don't, we make good fans, but we don't make good disciples. We got people that come and they cheer a preacher on. They know how to say hallelujah. They'll jump around when they get really encouraged. But there's nothing that happens when they leave those doors because they're followers, they're not disciples. So what is our plan to develop disciples? It's got to go more than just classroom time, word time. We're going to teach this, we're going to teach that. Where's the teaching and the training come to? I believe that the greatest incubator for growing disciples is the small group. Because in a small group, it's a setting where it is safe to fail. It's a setting where you're able in a smaller environment to not only teach, but to train. It's a place where you can look to that person that just started coming and say, why don't you lead us in prayer? And they're praying, oh God, we love you, oh God, oh Lord. And no one's snickering or laughing because it's a smaller group. And then when it's done, you can say, listen, don't stress about that. Talk to God like you would talk to anybody else. You can stop and train them. You're not going to have them coming, Brother So-so, it's your third time here. Come take the microphone and share with us this morning. He would pass out on the way. Or B, when he took the microphone, we'd all be like, oh my Lord. What's just happening? A church service is not an environment to train people like that. So where are they going to grow? They're going to grow in the incubator. So, do we want to be a church of groups or a small group church? That sounds like the same thing, but they are night and day. Let me explain what I mean by that. Most churches have some forms of groups. You may call them different things. You may call them small groups, cell groups, discipleship groups, house churches, whatever you want to call them. There's multiple things. Most churches have some sort of groups, but they may not be, and are usually not, the priority within the overall structure. A church with groups is a church that has groups, but they are not the main priority of the church. The focus in churches with groups is primarily on programs and ministries that revolve around the Sunday morning service. The underlying philosophy of the church is that the building is the focal place where church happens. Groups meet predominantly at the church building. The church has people attending small groups, but many times it's less than 50% of the Sunday morning attendance. The pastor believes in small groups, but many times is not involved in a small group. In short, a church with small groups views small groups as a good thing, but not the main thing. Now let's look at the other side of it. A church of groups, or a small group church, has a different approach and attitude when it comes to small groups. A small group church believes that it is critically important for every follower of Jesus to attend and get involved in a group. A church of groups views small groups as the main priority of the church. All of the staff members are in a small group. The senior leaders talk about the importance of being in a group on a regular basis. There is an intentional plan to develop small group leaders. The groups are in a place where fellowship, pastoral care, peer-to-peer counseling, and meeting needs to take place. A church of small groups is continually praying for laborers and leaders to be sent in the harvest field. Churches of small groups, or a small group church, have groups that meet in the community, in houses, businesses, community centers. Group members are impacting their community. A small group church believes that the body of Christ is formed when members come together to connect to Jesus, connect and serve each other, and connect and serve the community. So you see what the difference is there. A church that does groups. There's a lot of people that I've talked to over the years that, we do small groups. They do it, but it's a good thing. It's not the main thing. But I say to our church all the time, we're not a church that does small groups. We are a small group church. What's that mean? At my church, the church I pastor, is if you're not in a small group, you're not getting fed what needs to be done. Everything we do flows through that. Why? We said earlier, most churches struggle to get participation in a small group. So if you have 100 people, you may get 40 or 35, 30 to participate in groups. You might have 100 Sunday morning. But when you become a small group church, our average weekly participation from small groups and to Sunday morning is right about 90 to 95%. So if we have 200, let's just use a round number. It's easy for me to do in my head on the fly. If we have 200 on Sunday morning, we'll probably have 190 in small group. If we have 300 on Sunday morning, we'll have about 280 in small groups. The correlation there is where, because we have not made small groups a good thing. We've made small groups the main thing. There's a difference. Again, I'm not saying this is a right, but I'm telling you how this is how you have a successful small group ministry. Here's the deal. To make this transition and become a church that groups require, to make the transition and become a small group church requires an intentional reexamination of the church's core vision, values, vehicles, views, and verifiers. It's not a haphazard exercise, but a thorough, detailed measure plan to follow the Great Commission's mandate to make disciples. So we're going to talk about several steps here, 5 steps of how we can make transitions not to become a church of small groups. But again, don't get caught up necessarily in the fact, well, we're not doing small groups. Look at the idea. There's 5 principles to make any transition to make make an impact if you're leading a ministry or if you're trying to change the structure of a church. These are 5 key factors. Number 1, you got to develop a clear vision. You must have a clear vision for the direction of your discipleship groups. Habakkuk 2:2 says, write down the revelation and make it plain on tablets so that the herald may run with it. Without a clear vision for your small group ministry, the people in your church will be unsure and confused. To become a small group church, you need a clear and compelling scriptural foundation. Plenty of them in there you can use. We can find in Acts chapter 2, gives us a perfect example at the end, verses 42 through 47. Gives us a clear example of the functionality of the church in the early days. We found 4 key principles. We understand it was continue steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine, breaking of bread, prayer, fellowship. We find the 4 key components of a New Testament thriving church. These 4 components. The problem is, only really 2 of those can be done in a church service setting. And that is doctrine and prayer. You really can't have true fellowship at a church service. The 5 minutes that we pass by is more of a shallow, it's not fellowship. And we certainly, maybe on occasion we may do it, but we're not breaking bread. So if we're gonna be a truly thriving church, we got to have all 4 of those components in. Now, in a small group, you can have all 4. You can have all 4 on the same day. You can teach, you can have prayer, you can break bread, and you can fellowship all in the same meeting. You can't do that in a church service. Now, does that say church services are bad? No, they have their place and their importance. But if you want to be a New Testament church, there's 4 components that Acts says that only can happen in a small group if you want to do all 4 at the same time. So that's number 1. The other part is a good scriptural foundation is to go Ephesians chapter 4. Well, now we know Ephesians chapter 4, verse 11 and 12, right? That's one of the most quotable scriptures we've got. And he gave unto some apostles, prophets, pastors, evangelists, pastors, teachers for the perfecting of saints to do the work of their ministry. You know all that, right? That's the right one. But that's not where the thought ends. If you go back and you continue the thought and you go down to verse number 16, verse 16 gives us a very key part, and that basically, to paraphrase here out of the Greek, and that is, if a body is fully connected and functioning the way a body's supposed to, that body will grow. So here's the point. If a body's not growing, what's wrong? There's something wrong with the body. Example, my daughter is 12 and a half. She's 5'4" at 12 and a half years old. She's sprouting like a weed. But never one time in her entire growth years. Did I walk into her bedroom when she's laying there at night, look at her bed, put my hand over her and say, in the name of Jesus, I speak to this child and I say, grow. I say, grow in Jesus' name. You shall grow and you shall prosper. And I told my wife, you know what? We need to fast and pray because hope's going to grow. So let's beat the floor. Let's fast. We're going to fast and pray for 7 days that hope grows. No, our job was to make sure she was healthy. Our job was to make sure we took her to the doctors because we know if she's healthy, she'll grow. Our job was to make her healthy because let's be honest, at 12 and a half years old, if she was 2 foot tall, we wouldn't have to be going, don't sweat the day of small things. God, sometimes it's okay to be small. We would go, something's wrong with her because at 12 and a half years old, she should be bigger than 2 feet tall. But when it comes to the body of Christ, we say, well, we've been around for 20 years. We're only 2 feet tall. But, it's just nobody wants the message anymore. Nobody wants what we have. It's too hard. It's this world we live in. Maybe the body's not healthy. So then what happens, right? Nowadays, if you want to grow, they got all kinds of things you can take. You can take all kinds of stuff. You can take stuff in pills. You can take stuff in needles, and it'll make you grow, right? The problem with that stuff, it works when you're taking it. But when you stop taking it, what happens? Because it's not real growth. So what do? Our body's not growing. It's not healthy. So instead of finding out what's wrong, we start injecting it with all kinds of artificial growth measures. And I'm not against them in the context, but when you use them as a crutch to hide the fact the body's not healthy, it's an issue. So we go out and we do block parties and we give away stuff and we give away gift cards and goldfish and cars and houses and vacations to get people to come. And we high-five everybody because we had 500 in church. And 3 weeks later, nobody's there. Now, is that wrong to go out and compel people to come? It has nothing to do with that. The bottom is we're trying to mask the fact the body's not healthy. Because Ephesians says that if a body's healthy, it will grow. So when we're developing a clear vision, we need to go to the book and we need to decide in the book, what does the book say? Not what a church growth says, not what some seminar says, not what some guy on the radio says or the TV. What does the Bible say? Because if you want to learn how to grow, you got it right there in the book. You just got to go find it. It's in there. So what are these principles? So we got to develop a clear vision. We've got to be able to develop a vision that is able to be clear and that is able to be understood. And it has to be a vision that is based in biblical principles. There's a lot of places out there that will teach you how to market your church better, how to do this better, how to get better sound, better music, all that. But let's be honest, if your church is not healthy, none of that's going to work. Spend all the money you want, making all that stuff's great. But bottom line is, you can have an Azusa-type revival in a livery stable with horse smell all over the place if you've got a healthy church. So the first thing we have to do is we have to assess our own health. We have to look at our health. We have to look at the health of our body in the correlation. And the clear vision has to come from developing a clear vision from the Word of God. So if the body is joined together and everything from the muscles and the ligaments and are all connected together and it's growing and building itself up in love. Remember we talked about in first session that the definition of a disciple was to love. By this, all men know you're my disciples, by love. So we have a body that's connected, built in love. It will grow. It will grow. So once we have developed a clear vision, the next part is we need to start to look at our core values. And our values, again, need to come from Scripture. For example, the Great Commandment and the discipleship commandment we read today, the Great Commission comes from, go into the world. We have the Great Commandment of love the Lord with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. And we talked about the discipleship commandment, which is by this shall all men know you're my disciples. When you see this, you're seeing that Jesus is explaining to his disciples that love for God, love for our neighbor, love for one another should be front and center in our discipleship effort. So if that's the case, maybe your core value sounds something like this. Our goal is to develop people who love God, love one another, love our neighbors. So what is the point of all that? The point is that your people in your group or whoever you're leading need to know what your goals are. Because most of the time, the goals that we have are, well, let's just get to heaven. That's not a clear, concise goal. Because let's be honest, we got a whole lot of life to live to get to heaven. And I've often said this, I'll say it again. I've used this example, I'll use it again because one of my favorite ones. If this whole thing is only about us getting to heaven, we have really missed the boat. Because here's why. If you just were supposed to be baptized and filled with the Holy Ghost to get to heaven, the moment you get in that tank, you come out and we verify you're speaking in tongues, we should put a gun to your head and shoot you so you can go to heaven. Because every moment you're out of that tank and you get dried off is another chance for that old flesh to sneak up and take you out. So if God leaves you on this earth to walk for 20, 30, 40 years with him, why is he doing that? Because this thing is bigger than simply you getting to heaven. Oh, God, I know what it means, right? Oh, for above all else, I must be saved. I want to be saved. I know I want to be saved. But how do I be saved? Here's how I'm saved. I do what the Father tells me to do. I go what the Father tells me to go. I say what the Father tells me to say. That's what Jesus did. They asked Jesus, what are you doing? He says, I go where the Father tells me. I do what the Father tells me to do. That's what this is about. So when I understand that I have a clear vision, and I start to see from that clear vision, what are going to be my core values? What are the things that we're going to hold to? What are the foundational core values that we're going to build on? What are the core values of Jesus? What did Jesus represent? What did the early church represent? What were the core values of that first church? It was a church built on love. It was a church built on the demonstration of spirit and power. It was a demonstration. I'll give you an example. I will read to you, not because it's so good, but just give you an example of something we've done here at the church I pastor. We did this exercise, and we came up with what we considered, and that was that we are a place to preach and teach the whole gospel of Jesus Christ, to love God and love all people, encouraging and inspiring everyone to find their place in the kingdom of God, and to continually grow in the pursuit of being a worshiping body, evangelistic community, a discipleship center, and equipping network. Why is that important? Well, it's important to this, that everybody in my church should know these are the goals. Everything we do is going to be based in trying to accomplish one of those four things. So that we're not filling the calendar up with just stuff so that we can look back and go, well, we're doing something. But everything we're doing has to be laid on the altar of, is this a part of the vision? Does this fit the vision? Is this going to put the vision to go forward? There's a lot of times where people do things because they don't know what to do, but it has nothing to do with what the end result's trying to do. We're just trying to fill a calendar. We're not trying to fill a calendar. We're trying to accomplish a vision. So once we've established those things, the next thing, which is important, is we have to be able to present a clear and concise view. Why is this important? Let's go back to some biblical examples. So we know the Tower of Babel, correct? We understand that they were building the Tower of Babel, and we understand when God came along and he caused them to speak a different language, right? We knew all of that. What was the key factor in that? Brother Smith, he did not take away their tools. He did not take away their construction equipment. He did not take away the material. He didn't take away anything that was needed. He just made them speak a different language. So what does that mean? That means if you've got all the gadgets, all the latest stuff, you've got all this stuff, but everybody in your church is not speaking the same language, you're not going to be able to accomplish anything. You've got to be able to establish a common language. You've got to be able to accomplish a common language and speak the same language. And that language has got to be clearly and concisely communicated from the top down. Every leader, every person under those leaders has to be able to speak the same thing. You cannot let everybody have their opinion. It's like telephone, right? You the whole game, telephone, I tell you, you tell her, she tell her, you tell him, and by the time we get around the room, the message has changed. Is that not church? Church is where by the time the message leaves the pulpit and it's chewed on at home, it's changed 15 times. And next thing you know, you're going to call, why'd you say that? I never said it that way. Well, I was told you said it that way. Well, then you were told wrong because you're hearing it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sources down. So when we establish a vision and we establish core values, those things need to be articulated and written down so that everyone understands specifically what needs to be said. And everyone needs to be held accountable to what has been established as the baseline of communication. If you allow people to come up with their own ideas and their own thought process and their own ways of communicating, you're going to have chaos and you're ultimately going to fail in the execution of your vision because, again, the only thing I need to do to mess with your vision is just to get a different language being spoken. And you notice some churches, the preacher does not speak the same language as the saints, and the saints speak differently than preacher. There's a bridge, and so what happens? There's never a full connection of us working together. But what happens and we speak, there should be a common language spoken. I'm not talking about, we're going to use the word brother, we're going to use the word sister. I'm talking about the fact is everybody that's in your church that is a connected member, I'm not talking about the guests, but I'm talking about every connected member of your church should at least be able to articulate in a small 1 or 2 sentences what this church is about. If you ask somebody at Antioch West, where I pastor, what is the main goal of Antioch West? They're going to tell you in 1 or 2 sentences, we believe in small groups. You need to be in a small group. Why is that important? Because that's important is because that vision of small group connection has permeated throughout everybody. We don't have some people going, we're kind of a church of small groups, but you don't have to really be in one, and you can come whenever. That undermines the whole thing. Now we have an undermining of the vision. So the vision's being stated, but the legs are being cut off underneath of it because we have multiple languages. So you have to understand, you need to understand what's the clear role of the leader? What's the clear role of the saints? What does a disciple look like? What does the process of discipleship involve? What's a spiritual leader look like? What are spiritual leaders responsible for? These are all things that need to be articulated. They need to be described. They need to be communicated because everybody in your church needs to know what does my church what do we define as a disciple as? What are we going to define as disciple? What's a spiritual leader look at like at our church? Not being clear on these topics allows the church to drift into old patterns and ways of doing ministry, which makes change nearly impossible. An old saying is this: fog in the pulpit is mist in the pew. Fog in the pulpit is mist in the pew. If you're not crystal clear on the subjects that you're speaking, the existing culture will define them for us and will fall into the familiar clergy versus laity. To become a church, to become a small group church requires clarity. That clarity begins to melt away the fog around discipleship. Clarity comes from examining the Word of God, key passages and principles, and developing a firmly held conviction on who does what and how the church should be functioning. So once we've done these things, we started with we started by defining a clear vision. And now we've moved over to the idea we understand what our core values are going to be. And then we begin to articulate and write down what those are in a precise way. That then leads us to look at what are the vehicles and tools needed for the job. Once I understand, okay, so dumb analogy, but let's lose it. It's us in this room. So our vision is we want to go to New York City. And we're going to spend a day in New York City sightseeing and shopping. Our core value is to be able to get some good deals and have a good time and have some fellowship. And the precise communication is, we're going to leave at this time. This is what's going to happen. All that's fun. Now we got to look at what are the tools and vehicles necessary. Well, if we're going to accomplish the goal, we need something large enough to carry us. We need something that's going to allow us to bring back extra. We don't need something just big enough that we can fit in. We may need something that has storage to bring back shopping bags and stuff like that. Maybe we can get something where we all can kind of sit together and chat and have a good time. The tools may be, someone may bring some a game to do, or someone brings some music to play. We can sing. These are the tools. And now all of a sudden, once we get these things established, we can say, here's what we need to get the job done. Because it's kind of pointless to say, hey, let's go buy a bus. Want to go rent a bus? I guess. Let's go rent a bus. We need a big one. Why? Well, we just need a bus. For what? Because they're cool. Got big wheels, big tires, they're awesome. Yeah, but what do I need a bus for? Well, because everyone else has a bus. Yeah, but I don't want a bus. With no reason for the bus is dumb. But if we say, hey, we're going to take a trip, and all of us are going together, then the vision defines the need for the vehicle. So when we go to small groups, we can't just say, hey, do small groups. That's the vehicle. Then you're like, what do I need to do small groups for? It's dumb. I don't want to do small groups. Too much work, too much stuff. I'll do something else. Because to you, small groups is just another waste of time. But when we understand that small groups are the vehicle to get the job done, because we've clearly defined we've got to make disciples. We've got to be able to clearly define the vision of what is a disciple, how we're going to make them. And we clearly, the value of that is relationships built in the core of love. And finally, we've articulated how we're going to do that. Then everyone goes, I know the perfect vehicle. Small groups. See how that works? It's opposite of that. So once we've done that, we can look at what is the correct model, what's the correct structure to accomplish the goal. And not only that, what are the tools that we need? So if we're going to start training disciples, we're going to need tools. What are those tools? What do they need? What kind of tools do we need? That's going to be determined by the people in your church. That's going to be determined by the resources you have. That's going to be determined by maybe what part of the country you live in. We live in the church we live in. I pastor, traffic is a life-changing thing where we are. So we got to think of, okay, we can't have people coming to the church every night because traffic is brutal. People are driving an hour home from work. They're not going to do that every night of the week. So what are the other ways that we can train people without having to build? And for us in Antioch West, where I pastor, we don't even have a building. We own no building. We have no building. Zero. We rent a school on Sunday morning. Outside of that, we have no building. So now we got to think of, how can we get this done without a building? So we've developed vehicles and tools that don't rely on a building, because that's what we need to get the job done. What was the job? The job was we had a vision, we had values, we had precise articulation, and now we got to find the tools. And once we've done that, now we can go into the we have to identify the verifiers. What does that mean? So to become a small group church, you need some quantifiable and measurable verifiers to ensure you're meeting your goals. Here's something I did that the Lord gave me. I didn't even know people did this. I found out later this was a really good way to do it. I didn't know it. This is what the Lord gave me. I was seeking God about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago. I was seeking God for what did he want our church to look like? What is the structure you want us to have? So in order to find that out, what I didn't look at what our church looked like at the time. I thought, Brother Reynolds, what would our church look like at 10,000? Now you say that's crazy. That's okay. I'd rather be crazy than safe. So I said, what will our church look like at 10,000? So I got to thinking about it. Well, let me see, at 10,000, we can't afford a building because there's no way in this area, who wants to build a $50 million building? So I don't know if that's going to work. 10,000, how are you going to take care of all those people? How's that going to look like? So all of a sudden now, I'm like, whoa, I got to find, how do we do that? And then God started giving me the revelation of all of this and small group breakdown. Because then I started realizing, okay, here's what happened. So let's do a little math, right? At 10,000 people, if I average 20 people per small group, which is a little high, but we'll just use that as a round number, I'm going to need 500 small groups to get to 10,000. That means I'm going to need to develop between now and then 500 small group leaders. And then for every 5 to 10 leaders of a small group, I need an oversight person. So for 500 leaders, I need a minimum of 50 senior oversight people. And probably if I have 50 senior oversight leaders, I'm going to need at least 5, minimum of 5, senior oversight leaders. So now, I looked at all that, and now I looked at what we had. Well, we don't have 500 small group leaders. We don't even have 500 people. We don't have 50 oversight people. I don't know if we even have 5 senior oversight people. So what does that mean? That means I've got to put a plan in place and put a vision together so I can take you, sister, who comes off the street, you get baptized and get filled with the Holy Ghost. How am I going to take you on your spiritual journey from being a person that just got in here to taking you to be a small group leader, so that eventually not only a small group leader, then you can be an oversight person. Now I got to put these tools in place. Now instead of building from the ground up, I'm going to start building from the top down. When I start building from the top down, it changes it. Because here's what happens. Most churches build from the bottom up. The problem with that is when you build from the bottom up, you start hitting ceilings of growth. But when you build from the top down, this is what happens. So we have a church, we have a group here, and it's us in our church, and I know we're going to need to get to 1,000. Let's say at 1,000, that's 20 groups for 20 people per group. So 1,000, we need 50 groups to get 1,000 people. So we're starting with 6. How many is in here? So we're going to get to 1,000 people. We need 50 groups. I need 50 leaders. Of those 50 leaders, I'm going to need probably 10 senior leaders. Now at 10 senior leaders, as the pastor, I probably can handle that without having another person. So I need at least 10 senior leaders. I need 50 small group leaders. And each one of those has the ability to reach 20 people so I can get to my 1,000. So I'm starting off here. So here's what we do, right? Oh, we got to get to 1,000. So let's just start going out there and bringing in 1,000. That's how you build from the bottom up. But here's how you build from the top down. So what I'm going to do is the Lord begins to speak to me. And he says, you know what? Brother Smith has the hand of God on his life. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start training you how to be a senior oversight person. You're a small group leader now. You started our first small group. You're the first guy. You started this is our small group. But I'm going to train you how to become an oversight person in a small group. What's that going to do? You can't oversee what's not there. So in return, you're going to start training her to be the small group leader. Guess what's going to happen? That means you're growing, she's growing, everybody else is growing. Then we're going to grow. Next thing you know, you've got both of these ladies you're training to be small group leaders. In a couple of months, we've now got a little more people in our group. We're going to split. Now we split. You two are now small group leaders. Brother Smith is now overseeing all this. But you two, guess what you're going to do? You're going to turn around and start training these two right here to be small group leaders. And guess what happens? All of a sudden now, this all starts to trickle down. And without us having to pull anybody in, the vacuum that is created by pushing people up sucks people in. So what it is, it's like if you try to grow from the bottom up, you're constantly pushing the weight of no one having anywhere to go up. But when you move everybody up the rung, guess what? You create space on the bottom for people to move up. So we wonder why, if people aren't growing in our church, are they not growing because they don't want to grow, or is there nowhere for them to grow to? Are they just stuck where they are? Because what's the point of, you need to grow because of grow. But let's be honest, we're human beings. We want to grow for a reason. We all know we need to go to the, to go and exercise and walk and be healthy. But a lot of times it's like, I don't feel like doing that until the doctor says you need to do this because X, Y, and Z. All of a sudden you start doing it. When we tell people, yeah, you just need to do this, it's like, but when you say, hey, here's opportunity, all of a sudden now their whole attitude changes. So when you grow a church from the top down, you create space for new people. And when a new person comes in, and guess what? So now I'm a new person. I come into the group. I'm hungry. I'm fired up for Jesus. I want to grow. But now, instead of looking around going, where's my place? I can go, wow, man, look. You're telling me, hey, last year I was in a church. Look, God's already using me in this. I'm like, man, if she can do it, I can do it. He creates this whole atmosphere where it creates a culture of growth. And guess what? This is the best part about the job. I got to be honest with you. The best part about the job as pastor, guess what my job is? To make sure you're being fed. Because if you're being fed, you're going to turn around and make these two ladies are fed. And if these two ladies are fed, everybody in the group is fed. So as a pastor, I could pastor a church of 10,000 people and only have to affect 10 people. I can be honest with you. Think about a traditional way of looking at it. To pastor a church of 10,000. Do you want to be the person to pick up the phone every 5 minutes? Hello, this is Pastor so-and-so. Yes, I need prayer. Okay, hold on, I got another call. Pastor, I need counseling. Hold on 1 second, there's another call. Pastor, can you talk to my husband? And 1 second, I'm still praying. That's what you'd be doing. You'd be like, forget 10,000, take me back to 10. But at 10,000, if I have the right structure, as one man, Brother Reynolds, I'm just making sure that this group is healthy. At Antioch West right now, my job right now is to pastor 4 men. That's a tough job sometimes, but it's 4 men I pastor. Because these 4 men in return turn around and they pastor my small group leaders. And in return, those small group leaders pastor everybody else. And you know what? You wouldn't believe the stuff God's doing in people's lives, and I don't even know about. You'll find out, hey, Pastor, so-and-so went through that, and God did this. I'm like, I had no idea. Oh, yeah, their small group leader helped them out. Awesome. You say, well, I need to know these things. I'm responsible. No, I'm responsible to make sure everyone's being taken care of. Because I'll give you an example. Here's why. And I'll finish with this. In this room right now, there is half dozen of us or so. So let's just use this idea. What do you think the average time I would need to spend with you on a weekly basis to make sure that you're growing in your discipleship journey, especially if you're new in the Lord? Let's say at least an hour, okay? That'd be probably a good start. So in this room right now, I've got 7 hours of commitment every week. Now, I'm still a husband, still a father, still got a job. I got 7 hours of my week that I've got to make sure that I'm going to try to make sure that I'm putting into you. So the problem with that is if I have 7 hours, what if the church calendar is filled up with, we got this event going on, that event going on. Now I've got 2 nights left that are free. I'm cramming all this in. Now I'm being a terrible husband and a terrible father because I'm never done. But I tell everybody, it's okay. It's all for the kingdom. Why my marriage falls apart and my kids hate me. This is what happens. Because I'm trying to do everything at once. But if I have a church, a small group church, Small groups is all we do. This is all we do. Therefore, there's nothing going on during the week other than the fact that as a small group leader, my job is to make sure I'm communicating and keeping contact with this. But the problem is there comes a point in time where there's only so many. So let's say right now, this room was filled. And I'm pastor, and I'm going to do this my way. So now we could fit about 150 people in this room. So that means now I got 150 hours a week I've got to give to make sure everyone's getting taken care of. No, thank you. Doesn't work. But I think everybody in here could, let's say, could you carve out 5 hours out of your week? Probably. 3 hours out of your week? Probably. Let's say 30 minutes a week. 30 minutes a week of getting together, talking, praying, making sure everything, how's your week going? How's it going? Anything you need. Let's just say 30 minutes. Now we're down to 3 hours. 3 hours is, you can carve out 3 hours. You may miss some Facebook time and Instagram, and you may miss your favorite TV show. You might have to catch it later on Netflix, but you can get 3 hours in a week, okay? So you got 3 hours. All of a sudden now, everybody in this room of 150 is getting 30 minutes of quality time outside of church where they're getting understanding of their life. Now all of a sudden the discipleship process in our church is enriched. Everybody's being cared for. Everybody's being connected. Everybody, when they're missing out or they're going through something, there's always somebody right there. How you doing? Are you okay? Do you need it? And you know what? It's not left to one or two people to do everything. The idea that the church is the cheerleading section and the pastor and the pastor's wife are the stars while they do all the work and kill themselves and everyone cheers them on, that's not the way Jesus intended it. When Jesus said, guess what? Go into all the world and preach the gospel. If I ask you in this room right now, how many of you are preachers? Brother Reynolds will raise his hand. Brother Smith will raise their hand. But a lot of us go, well, I'm not a preacher. You're wrong. Because the Bible calls us all preachers. The problem is when we've made preaching the focus of the pulpit, we've made preaching a calling instead of a mandate. I'm not called to preach. That's not what I do. I'm not called to preach. Jesus said for everyone to go preach. Because we made preaching a cultural thing. Because if you're not up here going, and I said God is able to do, that's what we think preaching is. But preaching is simply the proclaiming of the good news. So I can preach on the job. I can preach in the classroom. I can preach on the street. I don't need a cheering section to preach. But we've made preaching a performance so that it has to be done in a pulpit. And that way we have saints and the whole church is filled with people that are cheering on the preacher. We got one preacher and 150 cheerleaders. And the world's not hearing the message. Instead of having one leader and 150 preachers. There should be one leader and 150 preachers, not 150 cheerleaders and one preacher. Because if we did that, then the message just goes out. So what are the 5 steps we need to do? We need a clear vision. We need defined core values. We need to be able to clearly, concisely articulate those. And we need to determine, based off those, what's the right vehicle. And then we need to identify the verifiers. What are the measurables that we're going to use to measure our progress? So if 10,000 is our vision, and we need to get to 500 groups, we're at 10 groups now. How are we going to get to 11? How are we going to get to 12? How are we going to get to 13 groups? Well, to get from 10 groups to 13 groups, I need 3 leaders. So I need to start identifying who 3 leaders can become small group leaders. Guess what? If you become a small group leader, that means there's somebody in the group that's going to take your place as all of a sudden now, we're moving forward. That's the difference between being a church that does groups and a church that is a small group church. Church that do groups, it's a good thing, but it's not the main thing. But a church of small groups or a small group church is a church that thinks in those terminology. Everything's based on the same vision and the same deal. Praise God. Any questions? Many questions. Okay, good. Love to do it. Thank you for your time. I truly appreciate it. Hope there was something I said, even if some of it did not apply to you. I pray that there was something I said that at least challenged you in your own walk with Jesus to go forward. So thank you for your time. God bless you. And we will Hopefully see you tonight. God bless you too. Hopefully see you tonight and tomorrow. Amen.